Okay. Hi, everybody. Obviously, we're here. Here's our promo, so you know that we're in the right place. And we're about to run a countdown for you also. Here we go. Okay, so we're officially here, but we're still doing things like sharing to Facebook a little bit. So be patient. We will be with you shortly.
I'm unclear what link I should be sharing.
You should be sharing the Facebook link from KRTD Media.
Okay.
Because that's where we are working from now. I have officially joined KRTD Media at this point. In fact, I officially don't know what I'm doing right now. So I think I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to leave it to Dolores and Sandy and Stephanie. I'm not quite used to the new arrangement yet. Okay, let me get back. Hello, folks. We are now officially about to talk. So tonight, we want to cover a very important paper that was written, by Andrés Bernal. He is he's a lecturer at CUNY, Queens College. He's a fellow at the Global Institute for Sustainable Prosperity, and he is nearly finished with his PhD at the New School, where he studied under Stephanie Kelton, among others. And he is officially still the acting vice president of the Center for the Public Purpose. But he's not very visible about that. It's a sort of a guerrilla position that he had at this point. So anyway, I'd like to share his paper, and then the three of us will go over his paper. And I've got this somewhere handy here. There it is. What happened to it? I'm adding it to the stream now. It's called Inflationary Pressures in the Time of COVID-19. The subtitle is MMT as a Theory of Inflation. and he identifies himself as a doctoral student at the New School for Public Engagement. But first, as a research fellow for the Global Institute for Sustainable Prosperity and a lecturer for the City University of New York. So I'm going to briefly go through the abstract. According to MMT, the only constraint on public spending for a current issuing authority like the United States government is inflation. This paper develops an alternative understanding and analysis of economic inflation through the lens of MMT in the aftermath of the COVID-19 public health crisis and consequential economic shutdown and reopening. It argues that conventional explanations of inflation remain ideologically constricted to an outdated social theory and conceptual framing. That's a very important part, of this paper, because conventional explanations, of inflation are pretty much tied to economics, to certain classical views, in economics, and to a neoliberal form, of ideology. So he's announcing here that those remain ideological constricted to an outdated social theory and conceptual framing. The implication being that his views here are about a different kind of ideology and a different social theory and a different conceptual framing. That point is very important all throughout this paper. As such, public policy responses to contemporary price increases, because the public policy responses are tied to the ideologically constricted views of neoliberalism, are limited in scope and incapable of neither effectively stabilizing prices nor avoiding the worsening of social inequities and harm. The paper will first develop MMT's insights about inflationary pressures as a theory of qualitatively determined resource use costs and political coordination, as opposed to a collapse in the value of money from excessive public spending. Now, that sentence is very significant also, because he's announcing here that the theory he's going to put forward is a different kind of theory, that it's not only about just the use of resources, it's not only about costs, but it's about politics too. So at a minimum, he's talking political economy as opposed to simply macroeconomics. But as we shall see as we move through, he's even talking about a broader view than that. Anyway, an analysis of price pressures throughout 2021 is then provided by examining supply chains, industry-specific shocks, and market power. Lastly, inflation is explored in the context of an ongoing planetary climate and environmental crisis with deep implications about the future of sustainability, and economic development, and price stability. And look at those key words there. There's MMT, of course, and money, and neo-chartism and heterodox economics. But there's also the Green New Deal, critical theory, social theory. He talks about accounting, critical management studies, supply chains, geopolitics, climate change, biophysical resources, ecological economics, sustainability. Everything he's talking about here, in certainly the majority of these keywords, goes beyond the discipline of macroeconomics. So one of the things he's doing in this paper is he's announcing that MMT itself goes beyond macroeconomics. He's announcing that MMT is multidisciplinary in character, in case some of you did not recognize that. He's making it quite explicit here.
Joe, am I allowed to share the link for this paper on YouTube?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Of course.
It is
and
coming
please
right up.
do share it. I should have shared it myself, actually. So I'm very glad that you are sharing it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would anybody else like to go on with reading the paragraphs? We can take turns reading paragraphs.
I'd actually, if instead, I mean, you guys can read if you wish. I actually would just like to just say some general thoughts.
Okay, please do.
I see this as, okay. I a little bit of background on my thinking that the primary problem that we have in general is the exploitation of the poor by the rich. I think that is the core problem. That is the core problem. There is nothing deeper than that, or that I can think of. The core problem in our society is that the rich exploit the poor. And so therefore that means that the solution is to empower the poor. That's the primary solution. Secondary solution is to disempower the rich, disempower the exploiters, to help the exploited. Primarily, that's the primary solution, to empower the exploited, to stop that exploitation. And the secondary solution is to stop the exploiters from exploiting. Okay.
Right. Okay. So I would like to comment on that, but to the extent that I do agree partly with what you say, but I also think the rich have been exploiting the middle class as well.
Okay, but I mean, rich. I'm saying that as very, very loose. I mean, I really mean, those on top and everybody else. So I'm just using rich and poor. I don't, but so I think we agree. I'm just making.
Agree too. I think we agree too. But I
want
to bring out that point.
Okay, fair enough. So I'm making it a little more simplistic, just to be.
They're exploiting everybody they can get their hands on.
Agreed. Everyone who's not fantastically rich. So I'm just using the term poor. So in this paper, and I honestly kind of wish that this point was made, because it kind of dances around that. And so everything he says in this paper, many of the solutions that he has in this paper are effectively empowering the poor. Yes. They're all practical steps to empower the poor, to stop exploitation, to basically stop exploitation by doing the two things that I said. So, like, I see this as the solution to our problem is just go out into the world, see what problems we have, and start solving them. And then that is the solution to our problems, period. We go out into the world, find a problem, and solve that problem, and then just work our way from that. And that is a lot of the examples that he gives in here are essentially that, supply chain problems and there's many examples that are not coming to me at the moment, but supply chain problems is the first thing, and consider the consideration of if we go to a green economy, then how do we prevent the whole problem just starting all over again, meaning making letting the rich come in and take over that and whatever. So I see this as basically saying very strongly of let go of these stupid rules and just go out into the world and see what is happening, and let's start solving those problems, as opposed to the neoclassical version of here are the rules and let's tweak our rules and then we'll go out in the world and see if it worked. That's what I see, like kind of the competing views here.
Yes, and I agree with that. It is certainly partly about that. And in the big picture, it's very much about that. But in relation to the details of the paper, it's about presenting inflation from the viewpoint of the paradigm, okay, of MMT. Okay, and it's about teaching people how the MMT paradigm is different from the classical paradigm, okay, or the neoliberal paradigm. Okay, and it's about but teaching people that certain principles the neoliberals use to approach economics and to approach policy do not make sense, in large part because they contradict the basics, okay, of MMT, which are presented here as kind of an aside. In other words,
what's presented as a side?
The basics, okay, of MMT. In other words, some of the basics, okay, of MMT, some of the basic points, truths, okay, of MMT are presented in context here. In other words, they're not made a big deal of.
Right.
But they're made as points, okay, in each of the paragraphs in contradiction to some of the neoliberal basic assumptions.
Right.
For example, while fiscal policy has largely been successful in stabilizing communities from the pandemic's impact, inflation is a direct consequence of the federal government stimulus, but nevertheless remains negligible. Instead, a combination of industry-specific shocks and disrupted supply chains has led to bottlenecks, delayed cargo ships, and shortages, which have resulted in price surges. We've also observed periods which, contrary to alleged ironclad laws of supply and demand, prices have stayed the same despite the shortages. So he's saying here's neoclassical economics saying that since we had the shortages, we should have had serious inflation. But we don't have serious inflation. Yeah, we have some inflation, but we don't have serious inflation. And also, he points out that there's growing evidence that major corporations have wielded heightened inflation concerns as a pretext to raise prices to increase their profit margins independent of costs. So, of course, in classical theory, what they would say is that the costs are rising because demand is chasing inadequate supply. But in this very first paragraph, one point that Andrés is making is that there's growing evidence that corporations have been pushing up their prices independent of increases in their costs. Okay, that's only one paragraph, but if we move to the second paragraph.
Well, I want to respond, if I may, and just by saying that I don't think that I don't think that what we're saying is incompatible. I think MMT is pretty much
not incompatible at all.
I think MMT is basically, here are the rules. Now go out and apply. Go out into the world. It gets out of the way. It gets out of the way. It gets out of the way so that we can do the going out into the world and finding the problems and applying them, as opposed to like the neoclassical is, here are the rules and you cannot let go of these rules, and if you get distracted by these rules, you're doing the wrong thing, meaning it's not compatible. It doesn't allow it. It forbids going out into the world. It really forbids going out into the world. I interviewed Asad Zaman a year ago, where a Pakistani economist who found MMT after many years of thinking being in the and he said that MMT facilitates Islamic economics, which to him is an important add-on to MMT. So MMT allows allows these things, it facilitates these things, it allows you to go out into the world. And so it's like this paper, to me, yes, it sets the basics down, and then it goes into all of these important topics in the real world.
Right. Okay. So let's make a very basic point about that. Okay. What the Federal Reserve normally does is they don't go out into the real world and look at things and see exactly what is going on in the various industry sectors. Instead, what they do in terms of their policies is they apply monetary policy on a macro basis under the assumption that when they raise interest rates, that's going to constrict activity, economic activity. That's going to cause a reduction in the demands, and therefore it's going to fight inflation, okay, when they do that. But that's based on a theory that doesn't have a lot of empirical evidence in back of it, because they're not going out into the world, the microeconomic world, the Federal Reserve is not, to gather that empirical evidence or to look at that empirical evidence. So what they're doing almost is making monetary policy in a vacuum and expecting the monetary policy to be effective. Okay, so that's the way I interpret what you're saying when you're saying they're not going out into the world. The policymakers are not going out into the world and looking at the facts of the world. And right. I think that is very true.
Right. They're too busy tweaking their interest rates.
They're too busy tweaking their interest rates or worrying about how they're going to tweak their interest rates, or whether they're going to go up by 1 basis point or 3 basis points or 5 basis points, whether they should do 25 basis points or 17 basis points, or, they worry about that as if the whole economy is one homogeneous thing. Okay, and it's not a real blooming, buzzing type of mess where different things are going on in all the sectors of the economy. Mm-hmm. And you have to affect each sector in a different way with different kinds of policies, which then implies academic backgrounds that they do not have at the Federal Reserve, because they're mostly economists at the Federal Reserve. There are not many political scientists at the Federal Reserve. There are not many people who are sociologists at the Federal Reserve, if they have any at all, or anthropologists, at the Federal Reserve. They're not a multidisciplinary type of organization. And that affects how they look at policy. And since they're not only about the macroeconomic types of monetary policy, but they also have a portfolio to regulate. They're supposed to regulate. They do very little regulation, and especially not in the service of fighting inflation. So, but we're going away from the article here.
Well, I want to ask Jimmy, what were your impressions of it?
I got a little, I'm actually okay. I skimmed through it before because I got it earlier today, but I mainly wanted to read through this kind of like in a first reader perspective along with the audience today. So I cheated a little bit, but I'm going right into it with everyone else.
Cool.
Okay, so shall we go on with the reading then?
Yes.
Okay, so would you like to read, Jimmy?
Sure. Where did you leave off in that paragraph?
Okay. Where did we leave off when we started commenting? I think I left off here. We've also observed periods where, contrary to alleged ironclad laws of supply and demand, prices have stayed the same despite shortages, as well as growing evidence that major corporations have wielded heightened inflation concerns as a pretext to raise prices to increase the profit margins independent of costs. Okay, so now you can start in the next paragraph.
All right. In the midst of current inflation anxiety that has already debilitated President Biden's Build Back Better agenda and set a course for interest rates hikes in 2022 and beyond, it's important to develop a coherent inflation theory and appropriate evaluation and management strategy that can separate insight from nonsense so that we don't lose sight of the real crisis we face: a public health crisis, infrastructure and supply chain resilience, climate change disruptions, neo-feudal inequality, and structural racism. In truth, financing is not the real issue, but...
Okay, move to the next page. Okay, but rather
it is the resourcing involving the country's productive capacity, as well as the politics of resource and cross-sector administrative governance, that matter. This article argues that the modern monetary theory movement has put forward the most coherent approach to inflation, and that adopting this approach will enable us to fight off corporate greed and the usual suspects who are using this moment to hammer their agenda of failed monetary policy and crushing austerity. I like
right.
that.
So before we go further, okay, I do want to make the point that that the very last sentence about corporate greed and the usual suspects who are using this moment to hammer their agenda, that's exactly what's happening.
Right.
That is Joe Manchin, and that is the Federal Reserve, and that is the conventional politicians. All they can think about is we have this inflation. So we want to do more monetary policy of the kind that has failed us in the last 40 years. We still want to do more of it. And we want to start pushing austerity. What has Joe Manchin been arguing? He's been arguing we have to push austerity because we have inflation. Anyway, go on, Jimmy.
Meg, can I say a comment before we go on?
Sure.
I don't quite have my head around this, but there's something about like this paper talks about a lot of different things because the world has a lot of different things in it. And you need to look, if you want to cure a problem in the world, then you need to look at the world, and the world is not simple.
Right.
And so
it's not all about economics. It's about things beyond economics.
Right. And so it's like it's a very easy and lazy criticism to come in and say, "Oh, MMT is so complicated." MMT is so complicated. It's not just that you have to go out and this all these, but it's like complaining about the reporter. It's like saying that the reporter is supporting murder because they reported on murder. They report, it's blaming the messenger instead of it's blaming the messenger instead of what the message is. Or they're blaming the report of a murder as opposed to the murder. Well, you know what I mean. So it's like, I don't know, that's what came to me.
Okay, that's all right. Okay, so Jimmy, did you have any comments on that yourself?
Yeah, it kind of almost makes me think like they only think of the half truths of things. As in, they'll go like they don't want to understand MMT, but then they'll go and say, we have a free floating fiat currency and our money doesn't mean anything. But that's as far as they get. It's like they get a certain amount of information and then they hit a wall on all of it. Maybe because of omitting, I don't know, but it just seems like, they get a little bit of it, but it's that next step that they just don't want to take.
But so maybe by now, there are many of them who have read Stephanie Kelton's book.
Right.
And they got a few things out of Stephanie Kelton's book that they now understand for the first time. But that's as far as they've gone, okay, in MMT. That's as far as they've understood, okay, in MMT. So they've learned just enough to be dangerous.
Yeah.
And they don't want to look at all the things that are listed in this paper, because then that would empower people, which by definition means that they will have less power.
Yeah, that would empower people. But the other reason why they don't want to go and look at some of the other things in this paper is because they don't know about those other things. Those are other things are beyond their education.
They don't know it
They've
because
learned.
it doesn't help them, because they don't know it. They don't go out and do it because it's a circle. They don't know it because it helps them to not know it.
Yeah. That's true. It's all
It's
true.
bliss, right?
Okay.
My son was in pajamas all last school year during the coronavirus. He did not do well in school. He was on the computer. Trust me, this is connected. He was on his computer all school year long in pajamas. He didn't do well, but he found a community of people through the computer. He found a community of friends. So now the real world to him is on that computer. And so now he's doing much better now. But he's doing well in school. He's doing chores, but he still has his community in his computer. And so he doesn't go outside because there's nothing for him, because he doesn't go outside because there's nothing for him. It's the same thing. So I know that is it. Whatever. I'll go on.
Okay, please go on, Jimmy.
All right.
Sorry.
No, you're good. All right. So what we call the national debt here in the U.S. is really just an interest-bearing savings representing the total sum spent into the economy that is yet to be taxed back into the form of treasury bonds. It is, therefore, not necessary to issue public debt for our government to spend. That's straightforward.
So that's a hard point, okay, of MMT. In other words, that's one of the primary points, okay, of MMT that he's just introducing here in context, and that he's not going into in very much detail, but he's educating people about that who read this paper.
And there are a lot of amazing references in this paper.
A lot of amazing references and a lot of amazing little points that are made in context. So people have a contextual reference for why those points are relevant or why they're important. Okay, please go on, Jimmy.
All right. You want to? I'm reading your highlights. So.
Oh, I see. Just reading my highlights. Okay, so I'll change it just a little bit. Crucially, the federal government does not issue these bonds because it needs to borrow in order to spend. Issuing public debt in the first place is a policy choice. A policy choice. Another important point from MMT. Issuing public debt is a policy choice. In other words, why is it a policy choice? Because the government doesn't have to issue the public debt. It chooses to issue the public debt. But it's made primarily so the Fed can drain reserves out of the banking system in order to hit its interest rate target. That's another important MMT point that is made rather casually. It is therefore not necessary to issue public debt for our government to spend. A number of important points packed into a few sentences there at the beginning of the theory of inflation. Okay, go on, Jimmy, please.
All right. So what is inflation and how should it be managed? Oxford's definition reads, a general increase in prices and fall in the purchasing value of money. With that said, it is important to note that the orthodox inflation management approach relies on a set of outdated tools built on shaky foundations of myths and assumptions disguised as natural laws, namely using deficit reduction.
Okay, continue on the next page.
Okay. Unemployment and tighter monetary policy. In contrast, MMT's inflation approach shifts the focus toward balancing the overall economy's productive capacity, enacting smarter fiscal policy, using a federal job guarantee to maintain full employment, and improving market, credit, and financial regulations. As a social movement of scholars and advocates, this approach has been taken through a normative and democratic framing of meeting social environmental objections and human needs.
Okay, that is another very, very important point there. Okay, not just shifting the focus to balancing, the economy's productive capacity. Yeah, that's very important too. The federal job guarantee is very important. But that very last sentence, This approach has been taken through a normative and democratic framing of meeting social, environmental objectives. By the way, that's small d democratic, not the party, and human needs. The reason why that's important is because neoclassical economics is supposed to be value free and is not supposed to proceed. They claim that there's no normative framing that they they are engaging on, that they're in no way connected to small d democracy, okay, in any way, and that they're not necessarily connected to social environmental objectives and to human needs. So what Andres is saying here is that MMT is explicitly a normative social theory in some part and not a value-free type of discipline.
Well, what is value free? Except value free in reality is passively enabling the values of those already in power. Apolitical, being not political, is nothing more than being passively political for those already in power.
Absolutely, Jeff, and that is the point.
Which is actually, when you hear people say MMT is not political, oh yes, it is.
Oh yes, it is.
It is very political to those who do not want you to understand how the economy works. The truth is incredibly political to those who want those who want to lie to you, those who want to deceive you.
That's right. And I think there's some division inside of the MMT community about this. I think there are some people who still want to say that MMT, is value free.
Yeah, I actually would love to. I know Bill says that, and I actually really would love to. I don't think you can really agree with the concept of truth is political to those who want to deceive. So I wonder how, for example, Bill Mitchell would reply to that. I'd be very interested in hearing his thoughts on that.
What he would do, I think, is to say that once you have the problems, in other words, once you take the public purpose, which the MMTers don't themselves actually formulate, but which is a formulation that arises out of the democracy itself. I think what he would say is that from that point on, it is only factual, and theoretical concerning facts, and that it doesn't include any normative judgments. In other words,
the descriptive part. Yeah.
Right. It's only descriptive, past that point. I don't find that point of view convincing, but it would go into too much detail here to say why not. It's very, very complex. It involves things like the role of values, in the selection of problems, the role of values in the selection of concepts, the role, of values in actually evaluating evidence. There's even a way in which values comes into the evaluation, of evidence. There is no part of scientific judgment that is not infused, with value. But it's a very complex thing to make that case, and it takes a very long time. And the arguments with the value-free advocates in going that way, are very lengthy arguments. The exchanges are very back and forth and have been going on at least since the 1950s. And I don't know that there's a consensus yet, on what is the right way to view things. I stand with the people who think that science is completely infused, with values, and that there's no way in which it's only about the facts. But that's a much longer story, and we're not going to get into it here.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna get off in about 5 minutes. I'm letting you know.
Okay, that's all right. Do you have any further comments that you want to make before you get off? Then
Why don't Jimmy continue reading, and I'll come up with maybe a closing something.
Okay, go ahead.
Jimmy, are you seeing the private message that I just sent on our private chat?
I never look at those.
Well,
okay, there are some comments there in the private chat.
Yes, you are correct. Working on
got it. Cool.
Absolutely.
All right, so keep reading, and I'll come up with something mildly interesting.
Okay. All right. Even the Federal Reserve admits that it has no reliable theory of inflation. Far from natural or neutral, a price index is a socially constructed indicator that variously includes and excludes prices that may affect various communities and industries differently. For instance, mainstream news headlines usually focus on core CPI, which does not include the more volatile food and energy sectors, and historically measures higher than PCE. What we include or exclude is something sociopolitically determined, which can and does change over time.
Right. And so we have to make some remarks about this because that is very important also.
Okay.
First, the point, even the Federal Reserve admits that it has no reliable theory, of inflation. That's enormously important because they can't claim any intellectual authority when it comes to inflation, and their policies in this respect are not backed by a reliable theory. That's a problem. He points out that what we actually have are proxy measurements, but we don't have reliable proxy measurements of the underlying state of inflation. And that the CPI is different from personal consumption expenditures. And there are, by the way, different versions of the CPI as well. So there are many different indicators, and there is really no reliable way of combining them. But then when he says, far from natural or neutral, a price index is a socially constructed indicator. He is saying there that the way those indicators are constructed is value impregnated. And that variously includes and excludes prices that may affect various communities and industries differently. Now, it's very important to understand that particular point, because if you make certain decisions about what you're going to use to judge inflation, like, for example, the core CPI, and what Andrés is saying, that choice is going to favor certain communities and certain industries, and is going to be reflected in the policies that you take to lower the core CPI inflation, okay, as opposed to the overall CPI inflation, okay, as opposed to the CPE. So those choices of indicator have a great effect on the policy choices. So in other words, it's not completely objective. It's our values affecting our policy choices by right from the get-go. And sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, if you weren't done, go ahead.
Well, I'm done for the present, so go ahead and comment on that if you'd like.
Okay, I just want to briefly say, Lana, please stop. Please stop what you're doing. But regarding the CPI, you choose what's in it and what's not in it. That is the same exact thing as what we were just saying before. Of the people in the Fed choosing to, they don't know. They genuinely don't know. Of course, because they choose not to know. They choose what to have in the CPI. They choose what to not have in it. And that is exactly the kind of thing that can make good faith people bad faith. Meaning, thank you, KRTD Media. Was the thing. So when you have bad data, if you provide bad data or not enough data, and then you give good faith people that, no matter what they do, you have made them into a bad faith person. I mean, they're not intentionally bad faith, but you have effectively made that organization, that person, a tool of your bad faith agenda.
yes, you have corrupted that person, and they don't even know that they've been corrupted or believe that they've been corrupted.
Yep. All right. Well, on that note, it was very nice talking with you both, especially Jimmy. Joe, you were pretty cool too.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Oh, and Bonnie, of course, Bonnie. No, thanks so much for having me on. I enjoyed reading the paper, and I enjoyed being with you guys tonight, and hopefully we could do this again.
Okay, take care, Jeff.
Absolutely.
I'm sure we can.
Thank you.
So.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, so I'll continue with the reading of the next paragraph. Importantly, MMT argues that prices in the real world do not follow law-like functional relationships with quantity. I should say something there, because the quantity theory, of money, which was famously used, by Friedman, by Milton Friedman, is a law-like functional relationship with quantity. And specifically, it specifies that price is a function, of quantity. So if you increase the quantity of money, that goes directly to price inflation. And many of the classical economists for years and years and years took seriously that particular equation. But here in this paragraph, it's pointed out that instead, as pointed out in the work of Frederick Lee, but Fred Lee, I should add, was one of the professors, at the New School for Social Research until I'm not sure how many years ago he died, but his was a fairly recent death. And he was a very popular professor, at the New School. I think at one point he was Stephanie Kelton's professor also. And I believe that in terms of economic school approach, that he was an institutionalist, a person who set a lot of store by the work of J.K. Galbraith. And what Galbraith did, John Kenneth Galbraith, Jamie's father, is that he studied institutions and was especially concerned with the effect of firms setting prices based on administrative processes. And Fred Lee followed him in this respect. And the Department of Economics, that I don't think Andres was actually in that department. I think he was in the sociology department. But when he studied economics, the particular department that he was studied with, I think, was very strong in institutional economics. So firms set prices based on administrative processes involving a margin of over costs intended to support their long-term stability and that is the stability and reproduction of the firm. Further, he says in the paper, price setting occurs within the broader legal and monetary conditions set by the public authorities. So he's saying that these particular factors are really political, in character. When firms set prices, they're setting the prices not based on supply and demand entirely, but also based on the power of the firm to influence the markets and to actually control the markets. And then when he says further, price setting occurs within the broader legal and monetary conditions set by the public authorities, of course, if the conditions are set by the public authorities, that's not a market either. That's not a free market either. So basically, he's saying here that the study of economics, the MMT approach to economics, like the institutional approach, goes beyond the study of markets and market supply and demand, okay, in the markets. It's broader than that. Then he says explicitly, this insight stems from interdisciplinary research about governance and cultural mediation, in other words, culture is involved also, and rulemaking, preceding and bringing forth economic institutions such as markets and property, as opposed to a world that's premised on methodological individualism and self-interested trade as the primordial building block of social life. So Andres is saying the economics and the interaction, okay, of individuals are not the primordial building blocks of social life, that the political and the cultural and the sociological, that those things precede the way that individuals come together and interact with each other. And then he ends that paragraph with, in short, the price setting process has always involved social determinations and political institutions all the way down. Now, this is a radical departure from the theories of classical economics, which look at the individual in an atomistic kind of setting and assume the individuals are rational in their approach to economic life. This is a much, much broader approach to economics than Andres is talking about here. Okay, please go on, Jimmy.
Sure. Rising costs play a vital role for understanding prices. As an example, when thinking about costs, the cost of credit is critical. Hiking interest rates at the Federal Reserve raises the cost of credit and can actually contribute to inflationary pressure. Yet this remains the common sense approach to many for lowering inflation regardless of the cost on communities, especially working class, impoverished, and historically marginalized communities of color. In fact, economists like Jason Furman, professor at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government and former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors under President Obama, admittedly never even considered that raising interest rates might actually increase inflation.
I find that to really be an amazing statement. To think that the chairperson of the Council of Economic Advisors under Obama never even considered that that was a possibility. Okay, in other words, after the episode of the Federal Reserve hiking up its interest rates in the late 70s, okay, in the early 80s, and having greater and greater inflation until finally the economy crashed, that even after knowing about that particular episode, someone who was the Council of Economic Advisors never even considered that interest rates might actually increase inflation. During that episodic period, raising interest rates coincided with increased inflation for years, but he never even considered the possibility.
Right.
It's just amazing. Okay, please go on.
Okay. Another important cost input is labor, the price of which cannot be separated from political processes such as setting investment priorities, the distribution of income and wages, how we manage productive constraints, who has control over primary infrastructures such as energy or communications, and how we account for the resources and the social conditions through which we all participate in the provisionings of goods and services. As economist Eric Walter Zimmerman noted, resources themselves do not refer to objective things, but rather contingent relationships between cultural, socio-technical, institutional, and natural variables. In other words, resources are not, they become.
Okay. Would you like to make a comment on that, Jimmy?
No, because I agree with everything he's saying. Like, this is pretty much letting us all know in our own normal language, like pretty much what we already know. So yeah, this is
So please explain what we already know.
that. Well, I guess what we let's see, where does it say? Another important cost input is labor. That is a cost of the output of our economy is labor. But it also includes other things like the conditions and things like that in which we participate. So that's what we do know. But this whole resources are not, they become, that is actually kind of new to me, because when you hear about resources, you think of, finite things that you need to make things, but becoming
Right.
it.
And so that is what has to be explained to people so they understand here. Okay. Something that has become a resource that's very familiar to us. For example, coal. At one time, the coal was not a resource. There was a time in history where people did not know how to use coal for heating, or how to use coal to produce energy. In other words, learning how to do that was something humans did. And they did it through socio-technical kinds of advance, through changes in culture, and through access to coal as a natural variable in itself. The same is even more true with oil. There were times when people didn't use oil as a source of energy. We learned how to do that. When we learned to do things, aspects of psychology are involved, aspects of sociology are involved, invention is involved, cultural variables are involved, institutional variables are involved. So the very notion or definition of what we consider a resource is always changing.
Right.
Okay? It's not static. So when he says resources are not, they become. But what he means is that things that we don't consider to be resources today can very easily become resources tomorrow. There's another good example, I should have mentioned, and that's silicon. We didn't used to think that silicon found in sand was valuable for anything. Now we consider silicon to be a resource because we use silicon in all kinds of things. So that's another example of social, cultural, and socio-technical and institutional things all mixing to have something become a resource that was not a resource before. Now, conventional economics does not involve the idea of resources becoming. That is outside conventional economics, but not outside of the purview of MMT, because MMT is not just about economics, it's interdisciplinary. Okay, please go on.
All right. More of these insights can be found in accounting scholarships. For example, Professor Paolo Quattrone traces the genealogy of accounting as a form of social discernment that grapples with the work of collecting and distributing value. Far from the recent neoliberal shift that treats accounting as a positive practice of purely technical, neutral calculations, most often at the behest of profits. Quattrone likens accounting to a social mirror that, through enumerating and record keeping, reflects back our decisions and their consequences. As such, accounting guides normative and generative sense-making and affordances with organizational life and an economy at large. As he states of accounting origins on an episode of Money on the Left podcast, numbers were meant to explore the ambiguity of life. I'm sorry, there was like a typo there and it got me all confused. Numbers were means to explore the ambiguity of life. They were means to explore the mystery of value. They were means to explore how we always deal with uncertain situations.
Okay, that I think, okay, was very well put, but I want to go back, okay, a little further.
Okay.
As such, accounting guides normative and generative sense making. In other words, when we do accounting, it provides a framework within which we think and which
Right.
helps us to come up with normative ideas and with new ways of looking at the world, okay, that allow us to develop a different point of view. And when he speaks, okay, of affordances, this is a particular technical term of a certain kind of sociology that became very popular in the 1970s. Okay, and what an affordance is it's something in your environment, okay, in your immediate environment that's sort of just there. It's kind of passive, but it enables you to do various things that you wouldn't be able to do if the affordance was not there. Okay, so that's what he means here. Accounting guides normative and generative sense making, and it guides the creation of affordances that help within organizational life and help in the economy at large. So, those kinds of thinking concerning accounting, that kind of thinking concerning accounting, is not something you find in classical economics. In classical economics, all they're doing is talking about the actual numbers as if those numbers are hard facts. They don't really speculate about how those numbers guide us to do certain things or prevent us from doing certain other things. So, numbers were means to explore the ambiguity of life. They were means to explore the mystery of value. They were means to explore how we always deal with uncertain situations. And they are means to explore all those things. But once we use the numbers and once we use the framework, those also do provide constraints on how we think and not simply affordances. Okay, I'm not saying, okay, that Andres doesn't actually recognize this, okay, as much as I do. It's just the point that every theoretical framework, whether it's accounting or whether it's some other kind, okay, of theoretical framework, enables you to see certain things, enables you to do certain things, but also constrains you in the way you're seeing the world, okay, as well. And so when you use different kinds of frameworks and you mix different kinds, okay, of frameworks, you create, okay, an ability to escape from a particular framework that has become a limiting framework, and you gain a possibility of breaking through into another broader framework that allows you to see the world and the mystery of value and the ambiguity of life, okay, in a different way. So that's what frameworks do, and we must never forget that MMT is such a framework. It is a lens with which to see the world. It looks great now at this point, and we all love it, and we all think it's great. But 25 years from now, or 20 years from now, there may emerge a different framework that allows us to have a broader view of things economic and things social. And we can never forget that that is always a possibility. In other words, frameworks are fallible. Everything is fallible. Okay, please go on, Jimmy.
Okay. From this framing, the notion of cost moves from a purely nominal reflection of commercial encounters in an efficient market to a contingent and dynamic social representation of productive capacity and social structure, along with objectives, and valuations that mediate both firms and the economy. We know from MMT 101 that it is always possible to invest public money towards deeper and more resilient capacities, but this also impacts the way we work with particular raw materials, as well as our ability to innovate and improve the conditions required to create energy, agriculture, housing, healthcare, art, and more. Thus, budgets and prices can be thought of as a collective representation of our societal priorities and political imagination across public, private, or cooperative sectors. Currently, the political process of price setting is overwhelmed by neoliberal disinvestment, corporate greed, and monopolization, but it does not have to be this way.
So what did you think of that paragraph?
I like it. That was the very basics of, what MMT Basic 101 right there. That was good. I got that.
Okay, very good. That is also, though, to me, what that paragraph is, okay, it went through a line of reasoning that was fairly complicated, okay, complex, and then right at the end of the paragraph, it delivered the punchline, very important punchline. Currently, the political process of price setting is overwhelmed by first of all, the political process of price setting. Notice, it's the political process of price setting. It's not the economic process of price setting. Is overwhelmed by neoliberal disinvestment, corporate greed, okay, and also monopolization. But it does not have to be this way. Why does it not have to be this way? Because it's a political process. It's not a process that is governed by fundamental kinds of economic laws. It's a political process, and political processes are processes that we can change, that don't have to be this way. So to me, that last line is a terrific punchline and enormously important.
It is, yeah.
Okay, I'll go on with the next paragraph. According to the orthodox lens, when the government spends, it is supposed to mechanistically drive inflationary pressures up, just as gravity pulls objects toward each other. To unpack why this view is wrong, we have to look at what orthodox economists understand about money in the first place. The orthodoxy clings to the myth that money originated from barter and exists as a scarce private commodity that passively facilitates encounters in the market. Therefore, governments have to go out and find that money, usually from taxpayers, to finance themselves. By contrast, MMT insists that money has, for thousands of years, primarily come from public authorities as a unit of account used to provision by resources, of course, for the government especially, set legal disputes, establish a payment system, and coordinate social obligations such as taxation, fees, and fines. So MMT is saying that money is inherently political because it primarily comes from public authorities. And of course, all public authorities we know are political in character. All governmental authorities are political, okay, in character. So he's saying, almost in a very explicit way, that the study of money and the study of economics is part of the study of politics. Now, that is a very radical thing to say for someone who's advocating for a particular approach to economics. It is certainly political economy he's talking about, as opposed to macroeconomics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, please go on with the next paragraph.
All right. In this sense, markets and labor are inseparable from the mediating dimensions of law and money as a kind of meta governance. Money is therefore an infinite public utility of monetary production that is only limited by the real resource capacity of the economy and the stability of its prices. Do you want me to continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. The conventional story ignores what we actually do with money. We spend it to consume as a claim on labor and use prices to determine purchasing power. The risk of inflation has less to do with the value of bills or numbers representing a currency and more to do with whether an economy can handle people spending in specific industries as well as how costs are distributed. This can involve the ability of private monopolists to raise prices and increase profits with little to no accountability. As Fidel Kaboub explains, what drives inflation in the U.S. today is four major areas: housing, college education, energy, and healthcare. These are all, of course, notoriously privatized sectors. He ain't lying.
He ain't lying. He's
No.
telling the truth.
Mhm.
Not only is he telling the truth, but it's another punchline.
Yep.
It comes out of the reasoning in that particular paragraph. This can also involve the ability, okay, of private monopolists to raise prices and increase profits with little to no accountability. And the punchline, okay, implies that is what's happening in housing, in college education, in energy, okay, and in healthcare. And of course, that's true. We are seeing it. These four areas increasingly are not subject to supply and demand. They're not subject to market factors. They're subject to the political power of those who control those particular sectors, who go around basically bribing the governments or bribing the people who serve in the governments so that they do not interfere with the political power of those who run the housing sector, the education sector, the energy sector, and the healthcare sector. And he's implying that that's why there's unusual inflation in those particular sectors, because the inflation is feeding the profits of those who control those particular sectors. So MMT's insight means that for our government, MMT insights mean that for our government, anything we can resource, we can afford. Of course, for centuries, this power has been used to conquer, control, colonize, and pick winners and losers, while the masses have been bombarded with propaganda such as Margaret Thatcher's infamous dictum, there is no such thing as public money. There is only taxpayer money, a dangerous myth in its own right. Yeah, once, but some years ago, but she had another slogan she used. It was Tina. Okay, and that slogan meant there is no alternative. She was talking about there is no alternative to taxpayers' money. That's what she was talking about. So some years back, I said, hell, it's not Tina. Okay, it's Tia. There is always an alternative. TIAA, not TINA.
Great.
In one story, the scarcity of money traps us into contracted zero-sum nightmare in which the only way to fund our agenda is by procuring tax revenues but from the wealthy. So then he quotes some other people, Scott Ferguson of Money on the Left, talks about the scarcity mindset, and talks a little bit about the crypto agenda and the dangers of that, and also Facebook's the cryptocurrency that they're trying to introduce now. Okay, and the general point, okay, that's being made here okay, is that these zero-sum politics are a recipe for perpetual, but neoliberalism, if not outright, but fascism. I couldn't agree more with that. Okay, let's try to go a little faster here. When public money is reduced to the constrained function of taxing and spending, it represses its true world-building capacity as an instrument of generative production and reproduction, with many more positive sum and qualitatively unique results than the mainstream orthodoxy allows us to see. Now, it just so happens just a couple of days ago, there was an article that appeared in the Peter G. Peterson Foundation's their newsletter that they send out, okay, all the time, and they had an article by a Stanford economics professor, and the article began by reducing public money, public finance, to the constrained function of taxing, okay, and spending. In other words, even after the circulation of MMT for years and years now, we are 25 years into the MMT revolution now, and 12 years since I got involved in it, almost exactly 12 years, okay, since I got involved in it. We still have people from respected conventional outlets teaching at respected schools and departments, okay, of economics, who are reducing public money to the constrained function of taxing and spending that represses the true world-building capacity of public money. Thus,
now, why do you think that they're doing that? I mean, is it they're not telling them the difference between state and federal, or is it just they're doing that on purpose? Why are they keeping us, blinded from how it works?
I think by now they're doing it on purpose. I also think that there's bad faith, okay, in what they're doing. They know. I'm sure the guy from Stanford knows very well that his orthodoxy, his theoretical orthodoxy, is being challenged by the MMT approach to economics. I mean, it's all over Congress now. People are getting educated in it. He knows it's being publicly challenged. Yet, in their newsletter, they publish stuff that never mentions the existence of MMT, and the MMT orientation, okay, or approach. Mm-hmm. They just go right on talking the orthodoxy, the neoliberal orthodoxy, as if it has never been challenged and is not being challenged right now. They're not engaging in dialogue with the MMTers. They're just talking to themselves, to their own little world, their own little sector. Okay, the publications of the PGPF are read by people in Congress. So they're just talking to the people in Congress who still believe in their BS, and they're repeating the BS over and over again like it's a mantra from the Bible. That's what they're doing. And it is propaganda. That is propaganda. Okay. In other words, in this paper by Andrés, he is challenging the conventional view with another view, and he's making you aware that he is challenging it, that he is criticizing it, and he's giving reasons for the criticism. Now, that is real dialogue. That is honest communication. You disagree with something, you say why you disagree with it, you make people aware that there are these other points of view. All these things are going on. You look at the PGPF publication, And all you see is their basic assumptions. They spill out a whole bunch of BS based on those basic assumptions that are currently under critical attack by a whole new school of economics, which is influential in Congress and influential in the public. And you're just acting like it's not even there. That is dishonest communication. It's meant to hold on to the true believers that had accepted that before by not even mentioning the opposing points of view, not even arguing against the opposing points of view. So that's what I think is going on, just pure dishonesty and propagandizing. Okay, so I guess it's getting late. We should begin to consider the comments. Okay, I want to do this again. Okay,
yes, please. I would love to finish this with you. Absolutely.
Okay, so I think we definitely are going to do this again. We note that we're on page 9. Now, you may also note this is a 40-page paper. However, the last page of the actual text, as opposed to the references, actually occurs on page 27. So we're roughly at a third of the paper done. So we're not really moving that slowly. Though at this rate, it's going to take us 3 sessions. That's okay. It's worth 3 sessions. It's
I agree.
a very, very important paper, because as we go more and more into it, more and more of the MMT framework for dealing with inflation will become clear, become available. There's a lot of MMT work that has been going on for years in expanding the MMT point of view on inflation. When I first started reading MMT in 2009, 2010, the views of inflation, while still much better than the mainstream, were nowhere near as detailed as they are now in going into the interstices of the economy beyond macroeconomics and talking about having to control, having to manage the factors that operate there. So MMT and its theory of inflation has become far richer, in my view, over the last decade. And it's a lot of the younger MMTers who have become instrumental in developing that area. And we're going to cover what a lot of the others think in this paper. This paper is very good from the standpoint of a review of the more recent literature on inflation and the new insights that are becoming available. And this paper is also significant because of the much broader perspective going into different disciplines that Andrés has and that he applies in this particular paper. So that's why it's a great paper, a highly significant paper.
It is. Really quick, you guys in the comment section on YouTube, I just want you guys to know that anyone in there that is not named Jimi Sinclair is not me. So any of those ones that you see that says Jimi Sunderland on there, I do not own a Gmail account with my married last name. So those are not me. I don't know who they are. There's just, I guess, a bunch of trolls with my name just started. This is just now happening.
Oh, yeah, this is very typical. We will skip over their comments if they still exist.
Okay.
And,
I was just wanting people to know that that's not. There are people in there saying hi, and I don't want them to get confused.
Right. There's also confusion because there are probably a number of them in the comments, who are using actually Lana Dell's name.
Yeah,
as well.
I'm used to that. I'm used to seeing her in there. I just have never
Jeff
seen somebody with my own name.
He said, "Please stop that, Lana. I want you to stop that."
Yeah,
I don't think
I'm
he was
used.
talking to Lana. I think he was mistaking a troll for Lana.
Yeah. No, he was in the comment section after he jumped off and was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Lana. I didn't know that was a troll of you." So he fixed that with her. This is the first time I've ever seen it with it's with my married name and everything too, which is way crazy. He's trying to throw a random phone number up there saying that that's my phone number and that's not my phone number. And he's trying to say that what my husband's name is, and that's not his name. So there's just a few different.
They're making a lot of mistakes here.
Yeah, a little. It's just creepy. It was creepy.
Okay, so we will get back to this sometime next week. I do not know exactly when, because I'm sort of a little bit at sea right now, okay, as to when, as to when we're going to have Palisa back, okay, and we had some things planned, okay, so I want to do some of those things too. But I'm not sure when the days are going to occur when we can do those things. So we could very well be coming back on Tuesday to do more of this, but it might have to wait for Thursday or Saturday, okay, of next week also. I don't even know if it's going to be Saturday, because Saturday is New Year's Day, and I'm not sure that people are going to be in the mood for a discussion of an important paper on MMT, okay, on Saturday. But we will try to get back to this sometime next week, as soon as I'm clear concerning everybody's schedule. And we will continue with it until we finish this very important paper. If it takes us 3 sessions to do it, we'll do 3 sessions, because it is that important a paper.
It is,
in my estimation. Okay, so for now, I'm going to stop sharing it, and we will go to the comments, because I'm sure that there are some very valuable comments mixed into what the trolls are doing. So there are about 184 comments there. I'm sure the trolls probably have half the comments. But let's see, we'll get by all of the greetings.
I believe I blocked her on here, so I don't think you're going to see. I don't think you're going to see her comments anymore on here.
Okay, that's good. But out of the 184 comments we have, I'm sure a lot of them are going to be by trolls.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to skip over all the greetings here so we can get to substantive comments. So I see Russell Gallman. And Russell asks, what piece am I reading from? I was sharing on the screen the latest paper, okay, of Andrés Bernal, which was published by the Global Institute for Sustainable Prosperity just yesterday. And we are reviewing that paper in depth for as many sessions as it will take, probably over the next 2 weeks' time. Okay, so I think someone left a link to that here. Okay, I neglected to do so, but I can certainly leave that link as we're going through the comments if I don't see one. So Brandy Weaver says, Jimmy, I loved your pics from your daughter's birthday. I haven't seen the pics yet from your daughter's birthday, so I would like to see them too.
Yes, of course.
So Amber Lee says, gosh, Andres has been busy. Well, he's been doing a PhD. I suspect that this is a substantial part of his PhD, this particular paper. He's been doing the PhD in part with Stephanie also. So, and Brandy says MMT theory of inflation, absolutely. And then Jimmy, Jimmy left the link to the paper at 9:10.
Do you want me to put it up again?
Yeah, sure. If you want to put it up again, that will be fine. But Russell asked about it though, a few minutes earlier, so probably he caught your link.
Earlier, yes. I mentioned to him that I was posting it for him.
Okay, great. And Russ says, this round of inflation has been primarily retaliation, in my opinion. Aaron Taylor says, what? Hi, Aaron. Nice to see you. And Russ says, the MMT lens helps us to democratize the dollar. It can help us to democratize the dollar, But we need policy changes for that, of course. And if we need policy changes for that, we're going to need dump the incumbents. So Barney was noticing today that 17 Democrats are retiring from the House. They're not going to run again. That takes care of 17 incumbents that we don't have to dump. That makes our job easier. But we have to dump the incumbents so that toxic money, all the money, all the big money going into Congress, okay, is toxic. And we have to get that money out of politics. Well, we're not going to get any of our bills through. None of them are going to get through. And that's not only in Congress, that's at the state level too. Everywhere you go, there are bought people by the health insurance companies who want to block single-payer health care in the states.
Mm-hmm.
They're in Washington, they're in Oregon, they're in California, they're in Pennsylvania, they're in Minnesota, they're in Massachusetts, they're in New York. They're everywhere we look. You can point out people on key committees bought by the healthcare industry.
Mm-hmm.
Until you clean those incumbents out, you're not getting change in this area.
Right.
Aaron Taylor says he just released it publicly this week on December 22nd. Just yesterday, it was published by the Global Institute for Sustainable Prosperity. And Jeff said it's only 25 pages, followed by 15 pages of references. I think actually it's 27 pages, followed by 13 pages of references. But he says it's not a long or difficult read. I think these days people consider anything over 5 pages is long. Regrettably. I mean, I agree it's not a long or difficult read from my point of view, but people are not used to reading 25-page papers anymore. He says most of the higher prices are due to company greed. Okay, of course, I should add that paper is very, very well researched. But Aaron Taylor says it doesn't seem to forbid going out into the world, but it definitely focuses on cost benefits, okay, and limited money. An activist MMT says, "Hi, Mom." Whose mom is here? Aaron Taylor says, don't the econ people at the Federal Reserve, but don't they mostly aggregate data? They mostly deal with aggregate data. They tend not to deal with what they consider subjective factors. They don't deal with what they consider to be the more subjective of the social sciences, like sociology or political science, anthropology, psychology. And Lexa Gotcha says, hey, all from down under. Hey, Amber and Jimmy, hopefully to learn some more on MMT. Aaron Taylor says, always. Jimmy Sinclair says, always ready to learn more MMT. And then we have Choose Ye Heretics, choose Carnation Revolution now. The simple, obvious, unacknowledged pathway to MMT. Perhaps so. I'm not in a position to know that. K. Ryan says, exactly, Jeff. Aaron Taylor says, what the fuck is Carnation Revolution? And she laughs. I think actually it was a revolution that happened in Portugal some 35 years ago or something like that. And, but I don't know exactly what connection it had to MMT there. The person who's bringing it up now may believe that a similar revolution here would open the way to using MMT, as if the military understands MMT. But with all the people coming out of the military, coming out of the defense industry, who have been going into Congress, I don't know if there's a one of them who understands MMT. Certainly people like Abigail Spanberger, Elaine Baccalauria, someone like Alyssa Slotkin, they don't understand MMT for sure. Amberly Grigo says, we're also battling literally decades worth of propaganda and antiquated ideas about federal finance on top of the willfully ignorant. Yeah, including right up to the present. That's not in the past. We're still getting that from the PGPF just this week. Are you guys going to read the whole paper or just highlighted? Well, of course, I highlighted so much of it. It's virtually the whole paper. We've hardly skipped anything yet. Okay, because everything he says is just so important. Oh, and then we get Purple Coalition foolishness. People should just ignore Purple Coalition. And I guess Russ Coleman likes this video. I know Russ likes MMT. I expected he'd be coming back tonight when we indicated it was going to be MMT. Oh, yeah. Choosy Heretics choose Carnation Revolution now says Carnation Revolution of Portugal 1974 relied on the legal principle of the standing military officers uniting cohesively with the constitutional keys to provide some military tribunals for fascists. I see. Well, that's interesting. Legal principle of the standing military officers. I don't know that is in our Constitution. So here, that would involve, I think, a coup d'etat. I won't read what the Purple Coalition has to say. Okay? It's good for a laugh, but to everybody else, it would be an annoyance. Somebody is inviting Amber to return to RP.
Yeah, the trolls.
Yeah, that's a real joke.
Can't have her. She's mine. My
Yes.
Amber.
Yes, she's your Amber. I know. Sandy says, laugh out loud. Okay, Silamba. Jimmy says, Lana, thanks, Kay. And Purple Coalition still operating. The values of April, 45 years since Portugal overthrew fascism, is a title of a good online article from 2019. Please leave the link to the article. I'm sure it's very interesting. And Lexa Gotcha says, hey, Purple, we're talking MMT. Nothing to do with characters, please. It's not nice. I'm here to learn. And Kay says, YW, Jimmy. What does YW stand for?
What is what?
Kay Ryan said, YW, Jimmy. But what does YW
Oh, you're
stand
welcome.
For? Oh, you're welcome. YW.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Makes sense. And Sandy says, hi, Aaron. Hi, Lexa. And Lana greets. And Choosy Heretic says, the Jacobin had Katerina Principe on a posted video from 2 Aprils ago. Okay, please post the link. And Lexa says, hi, Sandy Dagling. Some more greetings. I have to drink a little wine now. My throat's dry. The wine may or may not help. And Lexa Gotcha says, MMT equals how it is, regardless of the games the politicians play. And Choosy Heretic says Steve Grumbine is a strong advocate for MMT. Yes, he is. Seemed to get it at first when I spoke to him about the Carnation Revolution, and then he just dropped the ball. Well, he must have seen things a little differently from yourself, but he's still a strong advocate of MMT today, certainly.
Right.
And then a fake Lana pipes up and is talking nonsense to Jeff Epstein. And the fake Lana keeps on talking nonsense to Jeff Epstein. Some people are saying we're not ready for a peaceful revolution. What are we waiting for? Choosy Heretic says. Lana says, our approach here for peaceful revolution is dump the incumbents. Thank you, real Lana. And KRTD Media says that isn't Lana, that's a fake Lana. The Lana who said our approach here is for peaceful revolution is hashtag dump the incumbents. That was the real Lana.
Good.
That's real Lana's hashtag that we're using in dump the incumbents. She says, laugh out loud. You think they fear that tactic? They are laughing in our faces from the peaks of hubris. We don't just need to dump the incumbents. They all need to line up for military tribunal triage. Well, whatever is possible according to U.S. law, we can do. There are some pretty tough laws that were post Civil War laws. They can be applied today. However, Merrick Garland has chosen not to apply them. I believe he could call in the military tribunals if he wanted to. But I think you have to take it up with Merrick Garland and Joe Biden, as we have to take up most things with them. KRTD Media says we have many fake Lanas. There have been 437 accounts in the last month that have been blocked. Lana says, okay, time for me to duck out here tonight. Good night. Sorry to see you go, Lana. And Sandy says, bye. Jeff, about 200K people eligible, so we're talking clean out all the branches of government institutions, banking, medicine, pharma, everything, especially the intelligence agencies. Well, I don't know where you get to 200K people. And Brandy Weaver says, good night. And Activist MMT says, Lana with the wrench is Lana. And Jeff laughs out loud. Juicy Heretic says, the Knights of Malta and their Knight of Malta founded intelligence agencies are chaos. Of course, Get Smart was inverted, laugh out loud. And Emily says, sorry for the plethora of very boring and vapor trolls in our comments, that they can just be ignored. And they went after you today, Amber. Amber says, they can try KRTD, but I eat trolls alive. Kay says, Jeff didn't stay very long. Yeah, he warned us he wasn't going to. Jeff generally gets up very, very early. And so he doesn't like to stay up late. And this stream is a little too late for him. Okay, I'm afraid. He would be fine with this stream if he lived out, on the Pacific Coast like Jimmy does.
Like with me. Yeah.
But he's not fine with this stream. I'm fine with this stream because I'm a night person, but he's Purple Coalition makes uncomplimentary remarks about Jeff, who is a really fine guy. And Lexa says, there are no traitors. We're on the subject of MMT, regardless of the hats we wear. Yes, indeed. Yes, please do. And so Lexa says, hey, Amber, a.k.a. Joe Jackson, keep the batting, love your work, a.k.a. Joe Jackson. Shoeless Joe Jackson?
I miss him.
You miss Shoeless Joe Jackson? Shoeless Joe Jackson hasn't been around since sometime in the 1920s, I believe. So I think you're talking about the wrong Shoeless Joe Jackson.
Oh, no, he goes by Shoeless Joe Jackson, too. But yeah, we used to have a Joe Jackson that we used to work with. He's really cool.
Oh, so you mean an RP? There was
yeah.
Yeah, the famous Joe Jackson was maybe the greatest natural baseball player of all time.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
It's on heat.
Okay, that's fine.
I didn't touch it.
Okay. So, if you want to make it warmer, just use the up arrow there. I, Shane Coughlin, president of KRTD Media, would like to give a big thanks to all the trolls for increasing our views. Oh, thank you, trolls. Thank you, trolls. And Juicy Heretic, Seems like sometime I'll tell you the story of Shoeless Joe Jackson, or you can Google him. It's a fascinating story. It's very interesting. And it seems like a strange coincidence that our deficit is about $32 trillion. That is not our deficit. I think what you're talking about is a national debt. National debt and a deficit are two different things. And the CAFR report details Roman-controlled government, USA officials stealing $32 trillion into offshoring it. Well, please give me the reference to the CAFR report that states that. And Amber says, oh, hey, Joe. Kay says, good deal. Amber says, pensions getting pushed off on the backs of workers as 401ks allow corporations to raise their profit margins, giving rise to fat bonuses for CEOs. Yes. Choosy Heretic is... who knows? That may be a troll playing Choosy Heretic, because sometimes Choosy Heretic's opinions seem to be fairly sensible. That stuff about Rome, that's way out. Kay says 401ks, we're trying to get rid of Social Security. Amberly Grigo says, fair point, Kay. And Kay says, Frontline did a whole expose on that. Oh, you mean on them trying to get rid of Social Security? Yeah, I think they did. KRTD Media said backup account. KRTD Media Group says, hey, Amberly Grigo says that's important to point out that Catalyst K, how in trying to destroy SS, pensions died and 401ks gave rise to fat pensions for CEOs. What a twisted strategy. It was, absolutely. Kay says, absolutely work until you die. Juicy says, the Jesuit blood oath apologies for Google Mike. His middle name is Boomhauer. Well, I know a Blumenauer, but I don't know a Boomhauer. Kay says, yep, Amber, look up that old Frontline story on 401ks. I will, Kay. Thank you for that reference. And Russ says, got to head out. Thanks for the link to Andrés' white paper. Thank you for coming, Russell. It's great to see you here. Amberly Grigo says, Andrés Bernal just retweeted this live link. And Amberly Grigo says, not good night, Russell. Kay says, you're welcome. It was years ago. Laura says, good night, Russ. And Choosy Heretic safe to say they don't want to do anything nice for us. They want to do everything nice for themselves and bad guys. Which makes them bad guys that married. Military tribunals for bad guys for Christmas. I didn't say married again. That would be Mr. Google Boomhauer. I don't know what this is about. But it's polluting our common stream. Amber says, who do you classify as the dominions of Rome? And Kay says, privatization is a very bad word. I think Mr. Bernal's point about MMT being political is fair. Theories of gravity, relativity are all descriptions of what is and not subject to whims of imperfect humans. Well, that's not quite true, Amber Lee. It turns out that those kinds of theories are infused with value as well. I would have to give you a link to a complex paper on that to probably persuade you of that point. But every scientific theory is value infused in some way. But it's true that MMT is also value infused. It's more than a political point. But I think it's a point with respect to which the MMT community is a little divided. Some of the early MMTers do not accept that MMT is infused, with value. For some time, it seemed to me that the only ones in the MMTers who kind of accepted that it involves substantial value judgments were myself, okay, and actually Pavlina Chernieva seemed to believe that from the start. There were some other people who were sort of kind of on the fence with that, and there were a few people who were very insistent that MMT, okay, is value neutral. There are questions of epistemology here. The type of epistemology that Andrés actually appears to is called the social constructivist epistemology, or constructivist epistemology, okay, or variations on that. It's a very popular epistemology today, very popular in particular among younger scholars in the social sciences. And there are some very good journals that support that particular epistemology. The epistemology I adhere to is known as critical rationalism. And the most prominent person in the critical rationalist school is actually Karl Popper. But there are also many modern versions of his particular philosophy. At bottom, critical rationalism is a realist epistemology, which the social constructivists are opposed to.
Mhm.
But there are versions of the realist epistemology can be nearly constructivist in character. There's just a small difference, between what I believe is Andrés' epistemology and my own, for example. Just a little minor difference. And Mike Lewis says, Amberley, there's a big pushback in MMT academic circles against the economics as physics comparison because economics is so socially contingent and political rather than scientific. Well, again, Mike, I reject that particular distinction. I think in some unpublished work I did a very long time ago in the early 1970s, I think I showed that all scientific knowledge is subject to valuational decisions. Amber says, your assertions are interesting, but don't know how you reconcile juxtapose that with this current discussion. Not sure who you're referring to, Amber, but it doesn't really bother me. The versions of epistemology that I adhere to don't really conflict with the current discussion. And let's see, Amber Lee Griego says, Mike Lewis, thank you for that comment. That seems logical under the current available information. Amber says, this article is really good. Yeah, I think the article is really great. Great article. Very significant. Amber says, Jimmy, and leaves an icon I cannot read from this interface, but I'm sure it's available on YouTube. Yeah.
Oh.
And Amber says, love you too, mamas. And Lucky Burritos here in the comments says Jimmy and leaves a heart. And Lucky says, how are you not a mod, Jimmy? Well, I think Jimmy is a mod.
That was her talking to my troll, my first one. That's what I was saying. There was people in there talking to it because I've never had one before. So they were talking to me, thinking it was me.
Oh, they were talking to your troll, actually.
Yeah.
So in Lucky Burrito's case, she was talking to your troll.
I think Amber was too.
And Jimmy says, that is not me. Mike Lewis says, thanks so much, Joe and Jimmy. Lucky Burrito says, what is happening? Jimmy says, nope. Oh my God, someone is being me. Too many trolls on here. That's not KY number. I don't have a Gmail with my married name on it. And somebody says, doxing is against the law. Sandy says, I block her. And Lucky Burrito says, I block her. Sandy says, blocked. Jimmy says, blocked as well. Thanks all. Sorry about that. Brandy Weaver says, blocked. Lucky says, bots have been crazy. Well, I guess this is all pretty crazy. Let me see if I can find something.
Yeah, towards the bottom, there's people talking about some stuff in here.
Okay, I will move towards the bottom then. We've got only 6 minutes, so
Okay.
I have to get to that. Lisa arrived at 10:33. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Hi, Amber. Hey, stranger. Hi, Jimmy. Hi, Sandy. Hi, Shane. Hey. Hi, Brandy. Hi, Lisa. Love the highs. And Brandy says, at Lisa Theobald, I found a free sewing pattern for berets. Lisa says, nice job, Joe and Jimmy. Thank you, Lisa. And Lisa says, Brandy, and leaves some icons I can't see. And Lisa Girl says, hey, Joe, hey, Shane, in my old account, can you give me mod on here so I can help with trolls? Thanks. Lucky says, I'd like to make my dog be a red beret. This is Lisa Theobald. Get him, Lisa. Get those doppelgangers. Lisa Theobald. Lisa Girl is a troll. Brandy says, I don't know how to knit. Trolls have been bad lately. Emma says, so it feels so far in reading this article with you all. Andres has written an operating manual moving forward based off his extensive knowledge of MMT. I don't think it's exactly, an operating manual because, of course, it can't be detailed enough for that. But it's certainly a framework for developing, an operating manual. I would go so far as to say that. Amber says, I'm going to drink a little wine with you, Joe. Thank you, Amber. On that note, I'll drink a little more wine. Brandy says, I see and also make T-shirts. I have 6 Rome T-shirts to make tomorrow. Pretty cool. Shane asks for his tour of the poor. Brandy says, yes. Shane says, awesome. By the way, I'll get you into the Twitter on Saturday so you can start doing social media management. Randy says, still waiting on 3 more I ordered to come in. Okay, Lisa says, Amber, you are so right. The propaganda is deep and continues to be perpetuated. Shane says, love the story of Shoeless Joe Jackson. Oh, yeah. Amber says, no, Joe Jackson, mutual friends. Lisa Theobald says, hi, Bonnie.
Hi.
Who says, hi back. And Amber says, Shoeless Joe Jackson. Amber in Field of Dreams, who was playing Shoeless Joe Jackson. Right. And Shane says, great movie, Amber. I think Shoeless Joe Jackson, the character of Shoeless Joe Jackson, was in a number of movies played by different actors, though. Jimmy says, I totally forgot about Field of Dreams, Shoeless Joe. That's right. I always think of Joe Jackson from Australia. Shane says, I have it on VHS. We got 3 minutes because we end at 11 o'clock. Hey, Shane, are we ending at 11 o'clock tonight or can we go longer? Amber says, me too, Jimmy. I knew that was from our Joe when he posted it. He always supports our work and sends his love with love your work.
He's so sweet.
Jackson is a sweetheart. Jimmy says he is. And Shane says, we have reached 525 subs today. We were at 508 this morning. That sounds great. We are increasing quickly. That's wonderful to hear.
Yay!
Shane, I don't have a VHS anymore, but I do have vinyl. I do buy digital copies of my own favorite movies. Survives with Jeff Goldblum and Cyndi Lauper was my latest buy. And the CAFR report. I know the CAFR report. I haven't seen that stuff. And Shane says, my collection, 1,000 VHX, 600 DVDs, 7. Oh, you sound like a friend of mine, Shane, but he's much, much older than you and has been collecting for a much longer time. And he lives out in Montana.
Shane impresses me with all the old things that he knows for how young he is.
Yeah, me too. Shane's an old soul.
He is.
He says, love music and movies. Yeah, we love music and movies here too.
Mhm.
But we don't have collections. We do have a fair amount of old records.
Ooh.
What was that?
Just boo, boo, don't like records.
No, I said, ooh, like, ooh, it's
Ooh,
interesting.
ooh, okay. Amberly says, value when it comes to the description of relativity versus MMT, in my mind, rationalists contrasted by the fact that political will can't change gravity. It can change the economy, my point. Well, maybe political will one day will be able to change gravity. Maybe even using some of the theories we have now. Extensions of those theories, of course. And Lucky says, every bot gets a sip of wine. Shane says, you can no longer, there's nothing after you go ahead and finish the comments. Okay, I can go longer. That's good because I'm at 11 o'clock now. And no, it's not the deficit and debt combined. They're two separate concepts. Two separate concepts. I was planning on going to Kent for that old protest, but found out I was pregnant, so I didn't go. Afraid for my baby. Shake my head. Lucky says, Jimmy DM. So I think that Lucky is going to DM you, Jimmy. And Kay says, night, Lisa.
Good night, Lisa.
And Shane says, night, Lisa. And I say, good night, Lisa.
Good night, Lisa.
Thank you for coming back. And Lisa leaves a link to Chip Roy. Get a load of Chip Roy. Yikes. Don't know Chip Roy is. I'm probably the only 21-year-old who can work a VCR. Kay says, my mother used to say I was an old soul. Brandy says, good night, Lisa. Leah says, night, guys. Sandy says, night, Lisa. And I say night, Lisa, again, too. Have a great night. Okay, folks, so today's Thursday, and there is a Saturday, which is Christmas night. And Amber says, love you, Bonnie, and leaves 3 hearts.
Oh, thank you. Same to you.
And so Christmas night, okay, is on Saturday. Please either DM me on Twitter or send me a message on Facebook if you want to see a Saturday night show. If I do a Saturday night show, okay, it's just going to be a show for people, who normally come here. It's just going to be a conversation. I mean, we're just going to have some conversations. And, just be able to talk about things we want to talk about, including Christmas and family things and, anything we find interesting, okay, on Saturday night. Okay. So the option is open for Saturday night, but I have to have some demand. Okay, if I don't get any people who want me to be on Saturday night, I'm going to take the night off. Okay. But on the other hand, I don't mind being on Christmas night if there is some sentiment for me to hold a show then. So with that, I wish you all a very Merry Christmas, since tomorrow night will be Christmas Eve. And I will wish you other happy holidays too, if you're celebrating other holidays. And I'll be back on Tuesday with regular show. I'll be back on Wednesday with Dump the Incumbents. I'll be back on Thursday. And then on New Year's Day, I'll probably be back with the show, okay, as well. And Shane says, if you want to see a Saturday night show, make sure you message Joe Firestone on MySpace.
Oh my God, Shane.
How am I going to get messages on MySpace, Shane?
I agree, Amber. She says the only 20-year-old who can work a VCR. I'm so old. I know.
Shane says they brought it back for music. Sandy says, "Oh, hi." And Shane says, "Oh yeah, right. I should remember. I'm signed up for it. New Year's Day, actually New Year's Eve. There's going to be a KRTD Media live stream starting from 12 p.m. ET on New Year's Eve to 2 a.m. in the morning. I am not aware, I am not aware that we're going to have a New Year's Day show, however, from KRTD. Okay. So thank you all for coming. I see there are still some more comments. Thank you, Kay. I will keep in mind you want us on Christmas night. Shane says, ask Joe to play the promo. It's pinned on the KRTD Twitter. Okay, the KRTD Twitter. Let me go to KRTD Twitter. Let's see if I can get KRTD Twitter. Right. There we go. It's pinned. Thank you, Shane. And there it is. And Shane wouldn't like me to play it. So I'm certainly going to play it. Wait a minute. Let me get it back.
Hey guys, I'm Sabrina Selvati.
Wait, I'm going to start it off again because it started automatically. And I'm going to share the screen for that.
Chocolate.
Yeah, Bonnie is telling me chocolate. So while we play the KRTD Media Twitter, I will share that, add it to the stream, and now I will play it for you.
Hey guys, I'm Sabrina Selvati. I'm the host of Savvy Saps podcast and the co-host of Revolutionary Blackout Network.
I'm Shane Coughlin from KRTD Media.
This New Year's Eve, I'll be live streaming with KRTD Media.
Come and ring in the new year with us.
We'll be streaming from 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time until 1 a.m. into New Year's Day.
We have a few friends stopping by.
So come celebrate New Year's Eve with us. It should be a pretty awesome time. See you there.
Eastern Standard Time.
Yes. In other words, it's from
Hey
12
guys,
p.m.
I'm Sabrina Selvati. I'm the host of Savvy Saps podcast and the co-host of Revolutionary Blackout Network.
I'm Shane Coughlin from KRTD Media.
This New Year's Eve, I'll be live streaming with KRTD Media.
Come and ring in the new year with us.
We'll be streaming from 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time until 1 a.m. into New Year's Day.
We have a few friends stopping by.
So come celebrate New Year's Eve with us. It should be a pretty awesome time. See you there.
Okay, so that's a great
Hey guys, I'm
promo.
Sabrina Selvati. I'm the host of Savvy
You
Saps.
probably have to get rid of it off the stream.
Yeah, I just did.
All right.
Well, I'll get rid of it on the stream. Here we are. Okay, so we're back. So those are the details of the New Year's Eve party. I'm sure that I'm going to be in and out of it all day long because, it's going to be fun. And I'm sure a lot of our folks, are going to be in and out of it. I think Lisa, is going to be in and out of it. I think Jimmy's going to be in and out of it. I think a lot of us are going to be in and out of it all day long.
Yep.
And I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
It is. It's going to be a blast.
It's going to be a blast, but I guess you'll just have to bring your own. It's just a bring your own party. I don't think we can do anything about that one.
Yep.
But we're certainly going to bring our own. That's for sure.
Yep. Definitely.
And Kay says, I'm here alone, so would love to talk to you, and we'd love to talk to you, Kay, as well. Shane says he'll be there all day. And Amber Lee says, chocolate, yes.
Yes.
Okay, we would say what kind of chocolate, but we're not allowed to advertise on here. So we won't even say what kind of chocolate. Amber Lee says, I love Sabby. I think everybody loves Sabby. She's so personable and so level-headed that everybody really likes her. I think level-headed describes Sabby, level-headed and positive. Okay, thanks for staying so long, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
We still have 13 of you hanging in here. And Shane says Sabby will be showing up around 10 p.m. ET. Okay. And that will be fine. And that'll be fun. So for now, I am ending the broadcast. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you so much for helping. And I'm looking forward to the further sessions that we're going to have on Andrés's paper.
Me too. It's going to be great.
Okay, good night.
Good night.